Night shift. Everyone who's worked the night shift before knows that for the most part, it sucks. Your whole rhythm is thrown off due to the fact you basically sleep all day. All your friends work regular 9 to 5s, and it becomes really hard to keep up with your regular social activities. But it also comes with a few perks. For example, I work for a huge IT company with thousands of employees, but by me working overnights, I am in the building with one other person instead of the whole staff, which for me is awesome because I'm not really the social type. I also get to work from home a few nights out the week, so I can't complain too much. This particular incident took place on one of the nights I actually had to go to work on site. So I would have to leave my cozy apartment and travel downtown to a giant cold building. I wasn't looking forward to it, but like they say, a man's got to do what a man's got to do. When I arrived, I parked my car in the parking garage under the building. I took the elevator up to the main lobby, then made my way through the building to where my office was. After the security guy greeted me at the front desk, I was pretty much on my own for the rest of the night. Walking through a giant, dimly lit high-rise can be a little creepy to say the least, with the hum of the AC vents and the clicking of my shoes across the tile floor filling the airways. I finally made it to my cubicle area where I would begin my night's work. There were lights overhead, but only half were lit due to the night hours, so I would often turn on my desk lamp, which made my cubicle area shine bright, but darkening the area all around me. A few hours went by and it was now 2 a.m. I was starting to get a little sleepy, so I got up from my desk for a walk down the hall to the break area. I wanted to get some coffee, which would give me the pep I needed to get through the rest of the night. When I entered the hallway, it was pitch black. The lights were motion detected, but no matter how many times I waved my hands wildly above my head, they did not seem to want to cut on. I left my phone back on my desk, so with no flashlight in hand, I said screw it and walked down the pitch black hallway. My eyes slowly adjusted to the darkness, now being able to make out the area that was right in front of me. The break room would be coming up soon on my right, I thought to myself, with one hand dragging along the wall to keep my bearings about me. That's when I heard it. A door down the hall in the direction I was headed creaked open. I immediately froze, waiting to hear footsteps or any sign of another person, but it was absolutely silent. There was supposed to be no one else in here. My heart began to beat super fast. I slowly turned around and began to head back towards my office. As I moved down the hallway, I began to hear footsteps behind me. I stopped to listen, and it had yet again become silent. I knew I wasn't going crazy and knew that I had heard the patter of shoes across the cold tiled floor. I wanted to full-blown sprint back to my office by this point, but I did not want to hurt myself because only a few feet in front of me were visible at a time. I moved quickly as I could down the hall. The steps from behind were now gaining on me. The sounds of the steps seemed to overtake my own as they echoed across the hallway. Where's the door, I thought. I slowed down to find the door to my office space. Whatever it was chasing me was now but feet away. A dim light about 20 feet or so in front of me came into view. It was the door to my office. I now sprinted hard as I could to the door and flung myself inside. I locked it immediately and literally fell back onto the carpet, breathing hard, feeling as though my heart was going to explode. Then out of nowhere, a loud banging could be heard coming from the door. This was turning into a nightmare. I scooted as close as I could towards the wall so that whatever was on the other side of that door could not see me, but obviously it knew I was here. After about a minute or so of constant banging, it finally stopped. I don't ever remember being so scared in my life. Oddly enough, when the banging on the door finally stopped, just a few seconds after that, the lights in the hall cut back on. Trying to shake things off, I got up and made my way over to the door. I looked out the small window but couldn't see anything, so I decided to peek my head out. Luckily for me, whatever that was out there was now gone. I went over to my desk and grabbed my phone. About 10 minutes had passed during this whole ordeal, and I was not going to stick around the rest of the night to have another encounter. I called down to the security desk and asked if he could give me an escort from my floor down to the lobby. He was confused at first, but I explained to him what had happened, and so he happily obliged. He was to the door in a couple of minutes, and we made our way back down to the lobby. I went into more detail on the way, and he believed my story. He suggested before I left, I look over the cameras with him. I thought it was a great idea. So when we got back to the security kiosk in the lobby, he rewinded the video back for that floor. We found the timestamp from when I left out of my office. The cameras had night vision, so you can see me pretty clearly struggling trying to make my way down the dark hallway. We're to the point in the video now where I heard the noise because you can see me suddenly come to a stop. From the cameras you can see the door I heard swing open and a shadow seemed to glide out into the hallway. We both looked at each other wide-eyed as we watched a shadowy figure follow me down the hall. No actual person ever came into view, and when I ran back into my office, you could see the shadow overtake the light coming from the door. That's when all the banging started to occur. "What in the heck is that?" the security guy said as we both watched in awe. "I don't know, but I'm getting out of here." I didn't want to go back to the parking garage and get my car after seeing that shadowy figure in the video. I called for an Uber to come pick me up, and I would come back later that day to get my car. My ride arrived, and I left the security kiosk in the lobby, happy to get out of that building. I wished the guard good luck as he still had a look of uncertainty on his face. I only worked remotely from that night on, and if they ever really needed me to be on site, I went during the day when the place was fully lit and packed with people. Whatever that was will not catch me slipping again. Hold up. I lived in a small town in West Texas, and around that area there wasn't much for work. I moved back here a few years ago when my dad got sick to help take care of him. And after he passed about 2 years ago, I had kind of been just lingering around. When I left home originally, I moved to South Florida and had been living there until I moved back here. I had been working overnights at a local Shell gas station right off the highway. The pay wasn't bad, being that an old family friend owned the place, so I kind of felt complacent, easily adjusting back to the slow-paced lifestyle. My shift was from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m., and it was pretty much dead the whole time. Every now and then, I would get a random drunk guy coming in for a pack of cigs or some young kids coming in for their midnight munchies. Besides that, not much action at all. Most of my night would be spent watching Netflix on my tablet and drinking coffee to keep from dozing off. This night that I'm speaking of would not be any different, with the evening shift worker bidding me goodnight as we swapped guard. I set up my tablet and poured up my first cup of coffee of the night, then carried on with my shift. It had been an extra quiet night with only 1 or 2 customers coming in, but it was a Tuesday, so there was not much to be expected. The bells on the door sounded off as it swung open. A tall man in an oversized trench coat walked in. I wasn't one to judge, but he looked as though he could have possibly been homeless. I said hello and he just glared at me as he walked down the first aisle nearest to the door. We had mirrors mounted on the ceiling so I could see people in the back of the store. I glanced back down at the show I was watching on my tablet for a few seconds, then took a look back up at the mirror to check on the customer. He didn't seem to be doing much shopping at all and was just staring down towards the floor in the back of one of the aisles. He noticed me looking at him, then he shuffled along to the next location in the store where he would stop and look down at the floor again. This dude was starting to weird me out, so I called over to him. "Excuse me, sir, do you need help finding anything?" He did not look up, eyes still fixed on the location he had been staring the whole while. Lights at the parking lot caught my eye as I noticed a car had just pulled up to one of the pumps. Relieved that another person would soon be walking inside and hopefully to break the strange tension in this place. Looking over to the car for at least a minute, but no one ever got out. When I looked back forward, the trench guy was standing just to the right of the counter with a sawed-off shotgun pointed at my face. Empty the register, partner, and put your wallet on the counter. I was in complete shock. The same guy that had seemed to be completely spaced out was now full of life and quick-witted. He urged me to hurry up as he cocked the shotgun. I was completely overcome with fear. Shaking terribly, I opened the drawer and emptied all the cash onto the countertop. It was only a couple $100, but he quickly swept it into his duffel bag that he had produced from his jacket nonetheless. After he got everything, he ran out of the store, leaving me my wallet. He jumped in the car that had pulled up to the pump and they sped out of the parking lot. I dialed 911 and reported what just went down. It took about 15 minutes, but 3 cops showed up and took my statement. I called my manager, who rushed over to make sure I was alright. I went home early that night, not being able to get over the near-death experience. I would work the night shift for only a few more days after that, until they could find my replacement. I then put in my 2 weeks and finished them out on day shift. I took that as a wake-up call and decided to head back to Florida. My boss understood, and with my dad being gone now, it was nothing holding me there. I packed up my car and hit the road. I don't plan on going back to the Lone Star State anytime soon. I'm a veteran police officer who still likes the night shift. I've been on the force for about 15 years and I still volunteer for night duty all the time. A lot of the other guys look at me crazy, but I'm a nighttime sort of guy. I can drive my car as fast as I want, and at night you're sure to encounter some good action. But every officer knows all too well, you never know which night on duty will give you more than what you bargained for. Sadly for me, this night was right at my doorstep. I live in a suburb right outside of a big East Coast city. That is also where my patrol is. I got a call about loud screams coming from an apartment in a shadier part of town, so I flipped my lights on and headed right over. I was the first officer on scene, so I got out of my car and walked over towards the building, where the screams were supposedly coming from. When I walked inside of the building, it was silent. I looked up the stairwell and a little old lady was standing there looking down at me. She put her finger over her lips as if telling me to be quiet, and she motioned with her other hand for me to come to where she was. I cautiously walked up the steps towards her. When I got to the top, she whispered to me she thinks someone has been murdered in the apartment next to hers. I asked her why would she think such a thing, and she told me a loud struggle could be heard with lots of banging around and screaming. Not like an argument, she said, but screams of pure agony, her lips quivering with every word. I asked her what door exactly, and she pointed it out to me. I had heard all I needed, so I told her to go back into her apartment and lock the door. I thanked her for alerting us to the situation and assured her we would be taking it from here. I hopped on my radio to confirm backup, and right on time I had a partner who had just pulled up into the parking lot. She soon opened the door and entered the apartment building. I briefed her on the situation, and then we made our way over to the door. I gave it a few solid knocks, yelling out, "Police, is anyone home?" There was dead silence coming from the other side. After a few seconds, I gave it a few more knocks, even harder than I did the first time. Still nothing. I was getting a very bad feeling. I started to fear the worst, and I told my partner we had to go in. She wanted to radio back to the station, but I knew we might have already been too late. With one solid act of force, I kicked in the front door to the apartment, yelling "Police" with my weapon drawn. My partner was right behind me for cover, but neither one of us was prepared for what we were about to see. There was blood absolutely everywhere, to the extent that you can actually smell the metal in the air. There was no sign of the victim as we slowly made our way down the hall, clearing each room. There was not a sound being made as we moved through the apartment until we got to what would be the bathroom door. There was a light shining from underneath the door, which also showed me that I was standing in a literal pool of blood. Holy hell, I thought to myself. I signaled my partner, and on 3 I bust into the bathroom. The sight that was before me was that of true horror. There were 2 men in the bathtub, One was clothed with blood all over him, and the other one was completely naked, being eaten. There was blood all over the guy's face and clothes, and the victim had a giant knife sticking out the back of his head, the whole front of him cut open as if a pride of lions had gotten to him. My partner screamed out in shock, and I yelled for the man to put his hands up, but he just growled at me like some sort of wild animal with a ravenous look in his eyes. I stepped back slowly. I could hear my partner on the walkie yelling for backup. Like lightning, the man jumped up from the bathtub and tried to rush me. Covered in blood, he looked to be a demon that the devil himself had set forth upon me. I had no choice but to discharge my service weapon. 3 shots later, he lay before my partner and I. We made it back to the main hallway of the apartment building, where now all the residents waited in the thresholds of the doorways, trying to figure out what had just went down. Soon the ambulance and more authorities showed up, turning the place into a full crime scene. After a while, we went back to the station and made our reports. We both were given a week off of work, although I told them it was not needed. It turns out the suspect was high off his rocker on bath sauce, and basically went zombie mode on the victim. Even though I tried to brush it off, I had dreams constantly about that night. All my years on the force, and I had never seen anything like it. I'm still on the force today, and for the most part, I have worked through most of my mental issues. Yet every now and then, I still have dreams of that man running at me, face covered in blood with flesh hanging from his nails and mouth. Spooky Moose here. I'd like to thank you all for listening tonight, and we'll have more stories coming for you soon. Please like, subscribe, and share. Thank you.